Our first impressions, at least it's powered up, which is a good sign. Tape deck opens, we'll just take that off so you can see what's going on. The heads look nice and clean inside actually. It's copper taping. Rewind, forward wind, and then I'm assuming when we push play the heads won't go up. Yeah, they go halfway. So we give them a little help. Yeah, they're definitely stuck, not going all the way. So what we do want to check, as I mentioned in the intro, we want to check that these are spinning. And if you just put your finger in, I don't know if you can see that, but they are actually spinning. You might be able to see that on camera, but both sides are spinning, and these are just connected by a belt. And everything looks nice and clean in there, to be honest. It doesn't look to have had too much use actually. The rubbers look in very good condition. So I don't think we need to replace them, to be perfectly honest. They look very clean. I don't think this deck's had much use at all looking at it. Let's get it opened up and see what's going on inside. So we've got 6 screws on the top, and there'll be a couple on the side, and possibly, not that I can feel any, I don't think there's any on the rear, but we'll see in a moment. So we'll just get these whizzed out. Any on the back? Nope. Right, so we should just lift off now. There we go. Everything does look nice and clean and tidy in here. As you can probably see there, the capstans are spinning. So this is the part we need to work on anyway. So what we'll be doing is we'll just remove this from the chassis. But as you can see, this is your drive board here. So it's direct drive, and what you tend to file is, this is your drive board here. We'll just zoom in a little bit more for you. So this is your drive board here, and on this board is your controller. And what we usually find happens on these is if these are not spinning when the machine has power, walk away from the deck, because if you're lucky it will just be the capacitors that have failed, but you might find that your IC's failed, and you're pretty much nigh on impossible to find them, to be perfectly honest. So the only way to, solution is to swap this, and sometimes you need to change this as well, because this has surface mount caps on that can fail as well. But it is exactly the same mech as what you're finding in quite a few other Sony decks, such as the replacement for this, which is the ES, which a lot of people go crazy over. The main reason being because it's Dolby S and this one isn't. You know, if you imagine basically a 6ES is essentially this deck, but with Dolby S support, the mech and everything is the same. So we'll get this mech taken out, so we'll power the machine off. So what we need to do is take these 2 screws out here and actually get you to see what I'm doing. Apologies for that. There we go. So we're going to take these 2 out here. And there'll be 2 underneath the unit, or 3 underneath the unit, but before we do that we'll just disconnect cables. There we go. So that should be everything disconnected. I can see. So all we need to do now is take out the screws that are holding it in, which memory serves are these 2 here. Should drop out when we drop it back down, and hopefully we'll be able to just slide and remove. And this way you don't have to take the front panel off, you just need to you don't trap those cables there. There we go. Now we've got the mech out, we can put this to one side. But the part I was telling you about, what we need to get to is here. Let's move my thumb out of the way, hopefully you can see it, where you've got this belt, and this belt is quite saggy. So normally what you have to do with these, you have to take the front face off, you have to disconnect all the springs and pop this off and release the pins to bring the cassette front off as well. And then you have to remove the screws and then basically dissect the whole board. So one more thing to do is just take this front plate off here. So if you just pull that out, you'll find it's on a little wire. And you can just unplug that from the top. And now what we want to do is get your pliers, get hold of that spring, gently pull it that way and across, and then all this panel here, this retaining clip will just pop off like that. And if you look there, you should see you've got a circlip. So circlips have a tendency to go wherever they feel, so just be very careful when you try to remove this. If you have a nail, just get your nail underneath, because it's only a small plasticky type one. So what I tend to do to get these little circlips off is just get a sharp blade underneath like so, hopefully you can see that, and then just prise it up with your finger. You should find that it will come off and then go ping. Oh, as I say, it's so awkward to get off. Yeah, got it below, didn't go too far. And anyway, coming back to what we were doing, we can then just push that little retainer through. That will pop out, and then you'll see that the whole mech will just lift. The whole door frame, should I say, will just lift up, and then let you hinge it across and off. So you have to give it a little pressure. There we go, and it just all comes away. So you're now ready to work on it. Normally what you'd have to do is remove, you know, quite a few pieces. So all we're going to do, so rather than remove everything, is we're just going to release these two screws here. We're not taking them off totally, we're just giving them 3 or 4 turns. And so, and then we just turn it all back over. You should see that you've got a little bit more room to play with now. Just move that wire out of the way so you can see hopefully what I'm doing. So as you can see, you can prise that board up, and you'll be able to get your tweezers in there and pull the belt out. You can actually get hold of it. So you want to just take it off the bottom of the motor, and then if you just give it a good tug, when you feel it caught, you just can put your flat blade in, hold it in position. So we just pop your screwdriver in there now, you should be able to prise everything up. So now we've got the front off, what we're going to do is just take these screws out here. There's one up there as well. So you've got 4 in total, and these just hold the capstans and the direct drive board and everything on, which I showed you a bit earlier. So what we want to do is disconnect these as well. So we just take these 4 screws out here. What you'll find now is this board will lift off and you can disconnect it. And as I mentioned earlier, what you find on this is, if you're lucky, if the capstans are not spinning, it might just be one of the surface mount caps on this board or on one of the conventional caps that electrolytics there. What you do find though is, unfortunately, you have a problem with your processor, and the only way to fix it really is to replace the entire board. This board at the moment is looking fine. I don't see any leakages from any of the caps or anything from here. Likewise, those 2 caps there are not bulging or anything, so I think everything is fine here at the moment. So you can now access in here so what we can do now, is you've got a screw just in there. We just release it 2 or 3 turns. We don't want to totally take it out. We should then be able to come back to where the belt is, where we tried to release it earlier. And if you look now, hopefully you can see, well, I'm hoping you can see, that we've got clearance. So grab the belt and lift it over the top of that cog, assuming you can get hold of it. So as you can see, we just lift that up, we should be able to just pop it off the cop, and there you go, it's popped off. Hopefully you saw that. So what we do now is just put a new belt on, in reverse of what we've just done. Just load your new belt up with your tweezers, and then it's just a repeat of what you did. The hardest part will be to get it to go over. So if you just line it up in there and then use your flat blade to push it over the top, you should find, it's hard to see what I'm doing like this. I know you can't see what I'm doing. Put a bit more light on it, hopefully you can see what I'm doing better then. So we've got the belt in, we've just got to get it over that little notch there. So if you just use your flat blade, you should be able to notch it over. Like so. So you see it's now gone over. Now it's just a case of a little bit more fiddling around where you need to pull it back a moment and then lift that cog up behind to sit it underneath. I don't know if you can see any of that, but we're now lifting this cog up at the back there. Let's tuck the cable underneath. Let's tuck the belt underneath, like so. So hopefully you can see that what's just happened. So now that is now underneath that back cog. So we push it out and you see the belt's dropped down now. So everything can drop that down into place. Let's just hook that round. Hook that around the cog. So usually it's a lot easier than what I'm showing it, because obviously trying to show you with the camera and everything in the way as well, so you can actually try and see what I'm doing, which I know is easier said than done. And then what you would just do then after that is loop it round just get yourself a flat blade from the other angle. Get a flat blade from the other angle just to help secure the belt around the bottom of the motor. You basically pull it round this pulley first and then onto the motor pulley there. So what we can do now is start to put all the screws and everything back together. So we'll just change this belt first while we're here. Put a nice new belt on. Try not to have it all twisted, so put the new one on. And just spin it a couple of times. Before we put the drive board back on, we want to tighten this screw down here. So before we put our drive board back on, we'll just tighten this screw up here, and then retighten this one here. And then we had a screw that went in there. A screw that went in there, and a screw that went in there. Just tighten these up. So we can put the drive board back on. This one had a little cable clip, so you just want to make sure you line all that up first. And then pop it over and hold it in place. Plug your cables back in, got one for the dart board, and then you have another one in the moment, which is your front part there to go back on. So before we do that, we'll just tighten these front screws up, which hold the motor assembly in place. Then we get the front board, and it just recesses into two little clips there, and then you should just clip into place like so. And you've got two little black screws that go up the top here to hold it in. Now we just want to put the front back on, the front door. just want to pop this hinge through here on that side, and then likewise line everything up on this side ready, because now we have that little spacer to put back in, and then that really annoying circlip that's up here just to get off, which just pushes over the end. Like so. Now we want to open the door slightly. So we can get that there, and then we'll just put the hinge back on. The spring, sorry. Which just hooks over. Like so. Should find that everything now springs back and forth as it should. So now we can put this back in. So it's a repeat of earlier. So all we're doing is lining the door through the front, like so, and then lining these two screws up on the top, which we'll put back in now. We can put all the cables back in. So we've got all the system cables first. Remember to plug your little LED for the door front in, which I've forgotten to do there. That just plugs into that one there, like so. And we just put all your system connectors back in. Just put all the mech connectors back in. Put all the cables back in that tie wrap. Just keep things tidy. And we can plug the heads back in everywhere now. Let's put the record head back in. Playback. And bias. Where are you? Can't see for looking. Playback is that one. Sorry, bias was that one. So just put the two screws in the bottom quickly. Okay, so let's check and see we're working. Excellent. Lovely. So obviously for YouTube copyright, I'm not going to play any audio on it, But what I'll do now is pop this machine together. So what I'll do now is just pop it back together, and then I'll just do a quick wow and flutter test and everything on it, which is what this is over here. I don't know if you can see that. That's my wow and flutter meter that I use. I stick a 100 Hertz. So yeah, nice little tape deck. Looks to be working okay now. Obviously I'll do some more testing on it and everything, do some recording and playback and see what it's like, but in general it seems to be working okay. So we'll just pop the lid back on for the moment so we don't lose the screws. And then once I get a little bit of spare time, I'll do a full test on it, get my test tape in it and everything. Check. I'm not too worried about the wow and flutter measurements, that's why I'm connecting it back up, because obviously it's direct drive, so you don't have any actual adjustment. It's controlled by a crystal, so you can't adjust it. So if it's out, it's out. There's not much you can do about it. You do tend to get a little bit of drift over to age with them, but nothing compared to like a belt driven or a conventional motor. So this is a really nice high-end deck. You have power loading. You've got Dolby B and C. As I said, the replacement for this was the 6 ES, which was essentially the same machine except they moved the mech into the middle and gave it Dolby S. You've got calibration, options. You can have CD direct, so you've got a separate one on the back. It's a separate input on the back. Can you display mode off totally if you want? Obviously it's quite heavy. And around the back we've got a CD direct input, so you can get, bypass your amplifier, record directly to the machine, and the standard line in and out. So quite a nice deck for its age. I've always quite liked this sort of age of Sony equipment, to be perfectly honest, because it's when it was still quite nicely made and none of the plastic fronts like you get on the 2000s sort of equipment. The only thing I've noticed is it's had a little bit of a knock there on the corner, but that's nothing major really, and considering the overall condition of the deck, I'm not going to complain about that. I think it's quite a nice looking unit. But yeah, I mean, that's all working now. As I say, I will do another video at some point in terms of how to calibrate decks in terms of wow and flutter, using my wow and flutter meter over there and my speed tapes and everything. It's just on something like this, it's a bit pointless because it's a direct drive and it's controlled by a crystal, so there's no real adjustment as such to the actual playback speed. You can adjust things like your bias and everything, but in terms of your playback speed, which affects your wow and flutter, there's not much we can do about that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe, and see you again soon.